Coach, Illinois 7-1 at the top of the
7-1.
7-1, top of the West Division. Going into this season, Kansas was the only team that had a lower winning percentage the last 10 years in FBS football. And in 2 years, Bret Bielema has them at the top of the West.
This game always changes. But you were not surprised, neither was I. When he was out at Illinois, we both said give him 2 to 3 years. He's got a niche. He believes in toughness, well-coached fundamentals, which his teams are. And here they are. There's a chance they'll be playing a championship game.
I love going to practice in the fall. And the 2 practices, and back when Bret was at Wisconsin, you walk away from practice, you might not know how good they're going to be. But what you constantly say is, Heat and coach staff, I'll use the word heck, out of a team. You've built more than one program. Let's talk about building a program.
I took over at Bowling Green, Utah, Florida, and Ohio State. A little bit of trial and error, but every program's different. When you take over a program that's been really struggling. I mean, I took over Bowling Green, it was 2-9, I think 1-10, just a really struggling financially. There's a lot of issues there at Bowling Green. Take over Utah was a little bit different. So when you take over a place that needs a complete restructuring, the place has been really struggling, I would always say take a fire hose to it. And what's that mean? That means every element from academics to off-season sports performance, your weight coach, your training staff, your nutrition. Then you go on to the administrative part of running an organization. So you got academics, you got sports performance, you got the other parts, recruiting. And I would say take a fire hose to it, and that means maybe find out what they did well, but really get rid of most everything and build a new culture. If you take over a place like I did Utah, or you take over a place that, they're not bad, I always say take a garden hose to it. And that means just clean it up a little bit. There's some really good stuff here, good people here. And then you take over, like when I took over Ohio State, Jim Tressel, his infrastructure was strong.
Right.
I mean, Jim Tressel, you're not going to change much. Right. They had a little bit issues the year before because of the suspensions and all that, but I didn't go in there with a fire. That would have been, and I've seen people make that mistake. You go in and blow out a successful organization, that's not, first of all, it's not right. A lot of people are losing jobs, et cetera. But you're not taking the strengths that maybe the program has. Bret Bielema in Illinois, I would imagine that was a fire hose. We played those teams and they weren't very good. Matter of fact, they were less than that. And here he is in contention now for a championship of the West. So that, I imagine, would be a fire hose situation. You completely, he is a culture builder.
This may apply to you in Ohio State, as you mentioned, Coach Tressel. I've heard you say, if your best players don't fit the system, change the system.
Sure.
Well, your system on offense was different than Coach Tressel's, right? So how do you do that? Can you do it drastically or do it gradually through recruiting?
The thing is, when I hear a coach say they don't fit our system, you're wrong. It's a player's game, it's not a coach's game.
Right.
Change your system. You're 55-year-old men, go change your system to fit the personnel you have. Or when I hear someone say, wait till I get my own players in here. The minute you sign a contract or say, I'm taking over a program, those players are your players.
Absolutely.
And I've seen, you talk about programs back. If I'm a player and I hear a coach come, wait till I get my own guys in, I say, is that right? No, you are my guys. I love you. We're going to coach you. It might be things a little bit different around here, but you know what? You're our team. Let's get this thing going. Bowling Green was a complete rebuild. So
right.
It didn't matter. We weren't very good. On Utah, somewhat similar, just weren't very good. But I go to Florida as a great example. Ron Zook, excellent coach, was a coach of the Gators.
Right.
They actually led the SEC in offense when we took over. Larry Fedora was the offense coordinator, a great coach. They had Chris Leak and Faison was a tailback. So we actually took what they did well, and if we didn't have it, we studied it, and Dan Mullen was my offense coordinator, and we utilized some of the things. So we took from them. So I think that's a sign of if you have Dan Mullen's an excellent coach. We sat down, and that was his job. Same thing on defense. I would say, okay, take if they're good. But I would always take the benefit of the doubt, say you got good players here. I would always say you got good players here, even if they were struggling, because that's an excuse by a coach. You got good players here. What do they do well? Let's take what they did well, and let's start from there, and then build that package around it. And that was a challenge, but it's also a challenge that great coaches love.